So I myself am a huge comic fan, if you couldn't tell from the many bookcases behind me. I mean, you can't really see them that clearly, but I have a lot. Let me just take a little scoop back. As you can clearly see, I really like comic books. I mean, I have like Spider-Man tattoos, shit like that. I'm a big comic nerd, and I often feel, just with like any sort of fandom, you come across a lot of hot takes, especially within the comic community. Like comics have been a part of my life for a very, very long time. I remember reading an Ultimate Spider-Man comic that that my brother just so happened to have in his room. Getting into the video itself, I got a couple threads from Reddit here. So here we have a couple of threads that we'll be looking at just to see a couple hot takes, see which ones that I'm like keeping the video and which ones I will not. So we might as well start here with the DC Comics hot takes. I'm not a big fan of All-Star Superman. It was too weird for me and just had an overall odd tone. I still love certain parts of it though, like all the Lois stuff and Superman trying to make the world a better place before he died. That felt very Superman to me. I would say that I share a similar opinion. I don't love it. To me, if I were to rate it, I would give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10. I think Grant Morrison's writing for me at certain times is just a little bit much, so it keeps me from being a huge fan of his work, or sorry, their work. For the most part, I do think it's really good. It's just, some of the dialogue, I'm not a big fan of certain aspects of Superman's mythos, so some parts of it, like the Bizarro World stuff, I didn't really care all that much about, but still, I did overall enjoy it. I just don't love it. Like, I think a lot of people do love All Star Superman, but I think saying that, I'm not the biggest fan of it, like, I still like it, but, I have my issues with it, I think that's fair. But maybe it's just me. Let's introduce a little chaos. Batman is way overplayed these last few years. This was 4 years ago, by the way. I mean, it's still true. Dude's got his finger in all kinds of DC pies, and still don't even know why the F he was so integral to the Darkest Knight. Johns made such a big deal of Black Hand digging up Bruce only for that thread to fizzle out. Snyder's writer is also played out. I'll let him continue, even though I love Scott Snyder. I love his work on Batman. I literally just got the last 3 trades of his Batman run because I've had the first the first 7 volumes for a long time now. So I'll let him play it, and I just got like the final 3 with like the super heavy, in the Bloom storyline. Let this play out, but I'm we'll see. I could never get behind the idea that in his world, Batman is such a badass detective and a deeply researched Gotham historian, yet totally surprised by the Court of Owls. Interesting concept, but it could have done wonders in more capable hands. Shut the fuck up. I get it, some people aren't a big fan of Snyder, but as someone who loves Snyder's Batman, as someone who loves Court of Owls, like Court of Owls is to me like top 3 Batman stories in my opinion. It just goes to show how much of like a threat the Court of Owls were. Also, like Batman can be blind by his own hubris. Like even at a young age, the fact that he failed to find them meant that they didn't exist because he refused to acknowledge that he just wasn't up to par with that. Yeah, Batman is a badass in his run, but he has flaws, and I think that's what Snyder was kind of getting to. Like sometimes he with the death of the family, he pushes the family back, and ultimately that's what leads them to get captured by the Joker. Is like him pushing them away and not keeping them close. So yeah, while he does portray Batman as a badass for a good amount of the time, he does show him as a flawed individual that would let his hubris and his sort of trauma, I guess, in a way get in the way, especially with like the death of the family thing of him being like, no, I can't lose my family. I can't lose my family. Bringing back Jason Todd, massive mistake, and ruined the Hush arc. I also disagree with that. I think Jason Todd coming back, I'm honestly like 50-50. Like if they wouldn't have brought him back, I don't think I would have cared that much. I do like Red Hood as a character, but I could see like it does add to the problem of devaluing death in comics. But at the same time, nowadays, who really cares? But I would say the Hush arc would have been better if it was Jason. Making it Tommy Elliott, someone who did not exist until that storyline, sucks. I think Hush is ruined by its ending so much. Making it Tommy Elliott is such a like it would have been so much better if it was actually someone that we knew who was connected to Bruce, who had this long-standing history with him. That's how he knew all this stuff. Instead, they just made it Tommy Elliott and Riddler kind of because he was actually the mastermind over all of it. And if that's the case, just make it Riddler. If you want to do like a cool Riddler story, just make it Riddler. Just him be like, I've been the Riddler for the longest time. It hasn't worked. Maybe I can just try something new. But again, that kind of goes against his character, but about being like, all about riddles. But he doesn't really do any riddles in Hush either, so who cares? They did my boy Tim Drake dirty. Yeah. I liked him as Red Robin when he kind of went on his own, but with like New 52 ever since, it hasn't been the same. But one thing we can agree on is what the hell happened to Duke? Ghosted? Yeah. I mean, I think it just came down to the fact that like he was obviously a Snyder invention and nobody else really cared about him, so they just didn't use him. I like his look. I think he has a cool design, but obviously people aren't down to write stories about him. He's just one of those characters created by someone who just wanted to get them off the ground that nobody cared to use. Same with like Echo. Echo for the longest time after being created by Brian Michael Bendis just wasn't used at all, unless it was by Brian Michael Bendis. DC needs more teams separate from the Justice League and aren't made of legacy characters, Titans, Young Justice. What I liked about Marvel is they have several teams, e.g. Avengers, Fantastic Four, Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men, and Humans that can stand alone as a franchise and are strong enough to rival each other. I know there's the Doom Patrol, but they aren't ever relevant in the larger scope of the DC universe. The Terrifics is a step forward, even though they don't have a book right now. Also, stop shoving Batman in so many teams, yes. There are other teams like the Outsiders, but again, there's also like Shadow Pact, which I feel like they should have just made Justice League Dark. What they did with Justice League Dark with like New 52 and onwards, just call them Shadow Pact. There's no reason to add Justice League Dark other than the fact that you wanted it because you were hoping it would boost sales. I would agree with that. I feel like anything that's not related to Justice League or legacy characters, like Doom Patrol does have its fan base, but obviously DC does not care about it that much to actually give them a continuing book. DC has gotten to the point where there's too many legacy characters, but they keep introducing new ones. If 5G is happening, we're about to get a whole bunch of new ones, and I don't think I can mentally handle it. Oh yeah, this was before Future State, when they were calling it 5G because of AT&T. Ooh, but yeah, I can agree with that. Like, it's getting. You could definitely argue that, like, with the legacy mantles, it's getting very overcrowded. I think that's a fair assumption. And it does kind of come around to the Duke point that he made earlier, one of the posters made earlier. It does kind of come down to the thing of, like, you kind of gotta push some of them aside. But at the end of the day, most of the time they're doing that so they can bring in new ones. And it's definitely a shame because, there are people who are fans of those characters, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, it does get overcrowded to a sense. Martian Manhunter shouldn't be a founding GL member. The JL to me consists of Earth's greatest heroes. I don't consider him one. He's an alien with a strange past trying to learn more about humanity. Green Arrow would be my choice. Superman's Kryptonian. So I think that he's not from here. And like, yeah, he was raised on Earth for most of his life. And that's something I'll always stand by when it comes to like, him being more Kryptonian than human. No, he should be more human than Kryptonian, at least in like how he operates as a person. But saying that with Martian Manhunter, I don't know. Maybe it's also because I read New Frontier recently, and that does definitely give a more human aspect to Martian Manhunter. Like, I just don't agree with that. Comic, Hawkeye is worse than MCU Hawkeye? Get the fuck out of here, alright? Sure, in the comics, Hawkeye has more personality than the one in the MCU, but comic Hawkeye is just as annoying and petty. Constantly picks fights with the Avengers and starts whining when he doesn't get his way. I mean, that's right. He is kind of a bitch. He even leaves the team at one point because Scarlet Witch wouldn't date him, which, I mean, come on, bro. I'll take person with no personality over a schmuck with an awful one. Or the one from Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Now that is a good Hawkeye. Okay, we can agree there. I like the older outfit for Miss Marvel, Gamora, and She-Hulk more than their current outfits. I miss leotards. Captain Marvel looked immensely better with long hair, and that short hair independent female trope sucks. I do like the new outfit though. I believe with the Captain Marvel look, the shorter hair looks better on her. Flash Thompson made the better Venom in every instance. Eddie Brock is a better ex that causes domestic abuse. I mean, not wrong. Yeah, I love Agent Venom. I do like what Donny Cates did with Eddie Brock, but even then, like in the first, I believe it was like the second volume, he even makes reference to the fact that oh no, it was the first one. You could kind of tell through like a line of dialogue that he actually wanted it to be Flash that he was writing about. Silk being irresistibly attracted to Peter and vice versa was a silliest and most unnecessary part of the Spider-Verse event. Yeah, and I think that's something that Dan Slott has even come out and been like, yeah, I definitely regret doing that. It's hilarious when people who don't like American superhero comics bring up how manga is automatically better because 99% of the time it just means shonen manga. This manga aimed at teenage boys, really showing off a wide range of manga there. Both guilty of the same thing, thinking that stories aimed at teenagers are the peak of the medium and mostly ignored stories aimed at adults. Also, a lot of them will cite not being political as a reason they preference manga. Plenty of manga has political themes, they just don't pick up on it. And I believe with that being said, but I'm just going to kind of use this to talk about the whole comics versus manga debate. It's dumb. Because part of it that I really hear about it is, oh, manga comes out a lot faster. That's because the working conditions in Japan for manga artists is fucking terrible. It is widely known that manga artists, manga creators, do not live a long age because of how overworked they are. The creator of Berserk, whose name is escaping me at the moment, I believe it was said that he actually died a lot later on than most of the people in his profession, but that's because late into his career, during the later parts of his career, he started taking more and more breaks. And even then, he still died at a very young age compared to a lot of Japanese people. Most comic book enthusiasts don't really read comic books. There's probably definitely people who talk about like comic book adaptations, shit like that, who do try to reference comic books every now and again, who don't necessarily read it. I'm talking about, people like Soups. I would honestly be surprised if he ever did. I think he actually got called out once because he shared the fact that that the only knowledge he really had on Invincible was through a comics explained video, and people were just like, "Just read the fucking book, you moron." But because like it's one thing to say that to like someone like who just works a regular job, but when you have him who gets like uh deals with these large companies to do like sponsorships and shit like that, you think he would have enough money just to buy a comic, buy like a few trade paperbacks? The decision to bring back Hal Jordan and Barry Allen fundamentally broke what was special about DC Comics and then had never recovered. The idea of legacy and watching the hero you group reading move through their hero's journey and then through their mentorship journey was what made DC special compared to Marvel. I could agree on that. If I had to choose which one was better, it would probably be Hal Jordan's because I think Jeff Johns actually had a plan on what he wanted to do with Green Lantern, despite the fact that he could have just done it with Kyle Rayner, but he likes Hal Jordan, so he did it. It's like Hal Jordan and Barry Allen returning just comes to the part of Jeff Johns being like, but I like these people. Like these are my faves, so I want them to come back. I think Hal Jordan's was dealt with a lot better. Barry Allen's fucked up the Flash family for a long time because it just downplayed Wally. It made everyone just irrelevant. So much to the fact that when they rebooted, the Green Lantern Corps remained the same. Kai was still on there, Guy was still on there, John was still on there. But Barry was the only Flash. No Jay, no Wally, until they completely rebooted him, got rid of all of his history. And while I do like Ace, do I prefer him over OG Wally? Not really. They got rid of Bart, made him like an alien freedom fighter, I think. That was with Teen Titans. I think he didn't even really interact with Barry at all, except for probably one moment. But it's just, it was terrible. All new, all different Marvel Now era was one of the best things to happen to comics in years, and y'all squandered it and made them stop trying new stuff with complaints. It was good for like I would say the first 2 years. Like them, changing Captain America to Sam Wilson, them changing Thor to Jane Foster. I would agree were successes. They just overdid it. I don't think it's the fans' fault. I think it's I think it's Marvel Comics' fault for not knowing when to stop because they saw the success from the first two initiatives with Marvel Now and All New Marvel Now, and they just kept going. They just kept going. They never stopped. They never knew when to stop. and eventually people just got bored of it. So I think placing that on the fans is a little too much. But I do think that like the first two initiatives, like Marvel Now and All New Marvel Now, were good. I just think they overdid it. Corporate got greedy. They saw how much money they made. They just kept going. I don't think that's on the fans' fault. Donny Cates just follows the formula of combine character A with object B and make them do hype thing, and it's stale. It was fun during his Thanos run, but man, Cosmic Ghost Rider was way too overhyped, and his null stuff is just brain dead. Nothing clever or nothing going on there. A very one-dimensional villain. When he showed up in SS Black, I just felt exhausted. I definitely understand those criticism when it comes to Cates. I'm not the biggest Cates fan. I do think that he can do a bit much when it comes to his works, but like I think with his Venom run, while some moments where like him combining the surfboard and Thor's hammer to make that axe, yeah, that was a bit much. But at the same time, I do think overall he can tell a great story when he really has like a story to tell. Like with Venom, he wanted to write a story about fathers, shit like that, about second chances, and I think he did a very good job at that. It's just that some moments just, kind of took you out of the moment. That's all I really have to say. I think we got a few good hot takes out of this. But yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one.